Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you are a Taurus parent. I'm going to be doing a series on all the sun signs as parents, and then I will do the same for all the children of various signs. And what we would first look at with the sign of Taurus is what is the ruler, what modality is it in, and what element. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus. Taurus rules the second house in astrology, which deals with earned income, possessions, self-worth. And so Taurus is a sign that is very connected to the material world. And this can actually work out well when it comes to raising children because there's going to be a natural affinity for dealing with another being in a practical sense. So feeding a child, caring for a child in other ways, and because Taurus is a fixed sign, providing that constancy, that stability that a child really needs. An erratic parent is going to cause problems for a child in terms of that child feeling like they can count on something in life. So in that sense, Taurus has an advantage over some of the other signs. And Taurus as a parent will probably be a good provider as well, given the fact that Taurus rules the house of money. So even if the parent is not earning um, the amount of money to qualify an upper class life or anything like that, chances are the child will grow up in a comfortable household. It doesn't even have to be a middle class household. They might be, um, lower middle class and still the home is comfortable. There's always food, everything that our necessities are provided. Taurus as a disciplinarian will usually be more on the lax side, I would say, because Venus as the ruler is always choosing peace. And if this type of parent, and by the way, earth signs are feminine signs, so that affects how the person acts as well. There's going to be more passivity then. The earth and water signs are passive, which means that they tend not to take the lead. They tend to react to life rather than to act. The fire and air signs are masculine signs. That's a yang energy that is more action oriented, outward oriented. So Taurus will tend to kind of react to even their own children. And if they have children who are fire signs or air signs, but especially fire, because fire is very self-directed, I would say, then they may cave in a sense. Your motto is that you're a lover, not a fighter. And so you just want to keep the peace, even if this is, a smaller child. And one of the things that could happen is you might even be quite indulgent with your child because as an earth sign, you might give your child a lot of material items. You have that kind of materialistic nature, and children tend to grab any bright, shiny object. But at some point, it might get out of hand, and you realize that you can't keep doing that, that it just gets worse and worse. So when you try to put your foot down, you may have created a monster. So it is important for Taurus parents to not have too indulgent a nature when it comes to their children and spoil them. And I'm saying this as somebody without kids, so you can take my recommendation with a grain of salt, I guess. And actually, I don't advise people what to do because every situation is different. But it's not so much me telling people what to do, but to warn them if maybe you haven't had kids yet, but what you might tend to fall into, that kind of a pattern, to not do so, because um, Taurus is just a sign that loves, maybe you love to shop and you would love to make your loved ones happy, and it's just a natural inclination of a Taurus person to think that material objects are the ticket to happiness. And with children, if they don't learn moderation from the very people who are raising them, then they can easily fall into a pattern of expecting things instead of being pleasantly surprised when they are presented with gifts or whatnot. And so they become demanding, and also just for their own well-being, to know that there's more to life than things, and to develop their imagination. Um, so that can be one of the pitfalls. And also, if you have a strong willed child, that you end up kind of catering to them or allowing them to rule the roost in a certain sense. But you do have a stubborn nature. And I also have to point out that some Taurus people are going to have Mars in Aries, because Aries is the sign adjacent to you, and Mars is uh, tends to be fairly close to the sun. So if you have Mars in Aries, or even if you have the moon in Aries or any fire sign, you might have a more volatile nature. And but that might not, I don't feel that that would necessarily curtail your spending habits, because fire signs tend to be quite free spending themselves. But I'm talking about, you may be more assertive in that particular case if you have more fire represented. And the issue at hand is being flexible enough, but being assertive enough at the same time. Flexibility is very important, because with any relationship, whether it's spouse or parent and child, you have to be able to see other people's point of view and be able to act accordingly. It can't be my way or the highway. It can't be, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do my own thing. If you are in relationship with someone, their needs always have to be given some kind of consideration. Chances are you're going to encourage your child to be artistic because of that influence from Venus. And you may be artistic yourself. You may love music and pass on that love to your child, always having music playing. And also a love of nature. So with Taurus, it's funny because, like I said, Taurus and Libra are both ruled by Venus. But I think of glamping, and they have that glamorous camping. And that might be something that Libra does that's like kind of on the high end. But Taurus, I think, would like to rough it. and like to just have a down to earth adventure and not need to do anything fancy. The closer you are to the earth, the better. And you can, pass on that love of nature to your child. Also, I would say that even for female Taurians, you might not be upset if your child jumps in a mud puddle or, gets their pants dirty, because you might believe that children need to roll around in the dirt, that they shouldn't just be pristine with their clothing and everything, because they need to like be connected to that earth. And they talk about things like grounding, which is kind of like energetically connecting to the earth for spiritual and health benefits. But perhaps you kind of agree with that, but you don't know why. And you just intuitively know that it's very good to do something like that. A Taurus parent may find a child like a Pisces child to be quite hard to understand. And this is because Pisces children are very sensitive, and they can be very psychic and therefore otherworldly. And it may confound you trying to figure out where they're coming from. You may feel that they're impractical, and you have to um, meet your children where they are. It can't, this is where the stubbornness of Taurus can be a form of like a narrow mindedness, where you just think that your way of living life is the only way that there is, or that is meaningful. Instead, if you can loosen the grip of your own opinion and be able to understand that different souls express themselves in different ways, you can you pinpoint what those talents are in your more sensitive child, like the Pisces child, and be able to encourage them in those gifts. Another area that a Taurus may find a clash is that when your child gets older and they become more independent, you may kind of refuse to accept that they have um, grown up, and that might be the time when you become overly strict, because really you're being possessive. Taurus is a possessive sign. And when we think of the word possessive, we think of somebody who's jealous. But it's not always just about that. It can be if the individual thinks that they are losing that person in some way, that they kind of hold on too tightly. And so in this case, as your child gets older, it may be harder and harder to let go. And you have to kind of like really force yourself in some cases to give your child more freedom as they get older, because it might be your natural inclination to kind of become strict and have some excuse as to why are going to do that. And first of all, if you have been more on the lax side while they were little, this could really rouse them with rebellious tendencies, because they can see that things have changed and they're so used to having a lot of freedom, and then suddenly having it taken away, that it's going to feel really uncomfortable. So it's better to kind of do a lot of soul searching when you have gotten to this place where you feel resistant and you feel like you're kind of being overly strict and you don't understand why. You just feel that natural desire to keep them under your thumb when before you weren't as adamant to do such a thing. And really, you will if you trace back your feelings, you'll probably see that you are afraid of losing them. Because the more freedom you give them, the more they are drifting off and doing their own thing. And of course, that's developmentally appropriate when they're in high school for them to break away to some degree. They're finding themselves, they're individuating. And a parent who is well balanced and who wants the best for their child is going to encourage this because they know that independence is inevitable. They certainly do not want to keep their child dependent. That isn't a sign of love, that is a self serving behavior. And, when I say that isn't love, I mean, it doesn't mean that the parent doesn't love their child ultimately, but it's a fear-based action to want to keep them, close at hand instead of letting them leave the nest, if you will. Another thing that can develop is this, because Taurus is a fixed sign, you may be very set in your ways, and you may be very kind of stuck in a certain rut that doesn't allow for, let's say, I always think of Taurus as a rather conservative sign, but again, whatever is conservative, like my definition of conservative might be a little bit different because I always use the example of like your kid, comes home and has green hair and tattoos, but there are so many parents who have dyed their hair crazy colors and have tats that even that is kind of mainstream. I must be a complete, there's my Taurus rising, that I don't have any tats. My hair, I've never dyed my hair, so I don't know what to say about that. But yeah, so something like that, whatever the rebellion would be, that you would have this, I don't know if we call it a generation gap or just a gap between you being more conventional. When I said conservative, I probably should say conventional. And, kind of like that white bread mentality, like that this is normal, that's not normal kind of thing. And like personally, when I always notice when people, usually like these are younger people, the different types of piercings, and I've seen it all, and now I've seen like, something, through the nose, but it's like on both sides. It's not just like a nose ring, to one side of the nose. It's like in the middle and all of this. And it's like I always am kind of amused by that because that's not me. But if I had a son or daughter that was doing that kind of thing, I don't think that would be my main concern. I would want them to express themselves as they choose. And that brings me to another thing that could go on. Now, this would be more on the imbalanced side for sure, but because Taurus is ruled by Venus, let's say that a Taurus mother is not with the father of the child and she has a daughter, and her daughter becomes a teenage daughter, and her daughter starts um, turning the heads of men. That Taurus mother may perceive her daughter as some kind of a threat to her and develop some kind of competitive behavior with her own daughter. Now, even if you say to me, "Oh, I would never do something like that," even though I'm single and my daughter is beautiful, it could still come out in subtler ways, where you just think about yourself and you feel like you're aging, and you see your daughter, and there's almost like this envy that she is this fresh young thing, and you feel like you're starting to hit the wall or that you're older. Um, and if you have this attitude that your goal in life is to be attractive to men, then that can be problematic. And you may even go through your own midlife crisis as your daughter's in adolescence, and you may start to dress younger than you typically have because you're trying to overcompensate or something like that. So, I mean, and this could even happen to the best of the Taurus women. Not necessarily that you're some kind of, low rent kind of a person, but just that natural reaction to aging and being single. And kind of like your daughter is symbolic of maybe you when you were younger, and it's like you're seeing the past through her, but realizing that your present is quite a bit older than her. In some cases, it might not be that much older if you had your um, daughter when you were younger, when you were quite young yourself. So it could be some interesting psychodynamics going around there. And and that's another thing too, is like being that role model. If you are this is not to pick on women, but women tend to be the ones who are raising their children as single parents. And so I'm thinking about the single women who might be Taurus, and they want to date because there's a natural romantic tendency with the sign of Taurus, of course, that Venus connection. And yet, you have to be very discerning when you have children in the household. You have to protect your children because you never know what's out there when people have, um, just people that you don't know all that well. And then on top of that, there's that aspect of all of your children. Like, are you going to devote your most of your attention on your children or on your love life? And that could be something that you have to work out within yourself, because you may feel like, hey, I deserve to have a partner in my life, but it's very hard, especially if you're also working to balance all of those things. So the awareness of it is the important thing, because then you can always find some middle ground. But sometimes people are completely oblivious to the fact that that they're doing something that could actually deprive their children of needed attention, because they're trying to get their own needs as an adult met in an adult relationship. And not keeping in mind that their child has already gone through the breakup of the parents and might be reeling from that. The Taurus parent might be like so focused on having a new relationship. But I do think that for those people who are quite aware, self aware, as Taurus individuals, that you can provide a nice stable life for your child. And maybe there might be a few rocky times when they are teenagers, and when they become adults, maybe you become friends again. And um, you might be one of those parents who can't wait to have grandchildren because you're just naturally domestic, naturally family oriented. And you're probably a great cook, I have to say that. So your kids will probably benefit from that as well. Okay, that's what I have for you. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.